Welcome back, everybody. So there has been a lot of talk about this thing right here, the Walther PDP, the Performance Duty Pistol. Now, part of the reason there's been a lot of discussion about it is because they spent a ton of money marketing this thing, doing like commercials and all kinds of stuff and giving everything a name. You know, the Performance Duty Pistol, the Performance Duty Trigger. They gave everything in this thing a name, the Super Terrain Serrations. And they kind of spent a lot of money out there. So if you haven't seen my initial video on this Walther, it didn't go so well. So I had some problems. The first one I had actually gotten didn't even make it out the store. There was a problem with the slide, and then it took like over a month to get the plates. So we did not start off on the right foot here with the Walther PDP. But the Walther PDP, when I first got to handle it in the store, gave me the same kind of instant impression that the VP9 did. So when I first got the VP9 in my hand, it literally felt like it was made for my hand, and I was like, I can't wait to get this thing on the range. And then I was very unimpressed once I got it on the range. So the question is, will the Walther follow suit with the VP9? So we are gonna check out some range footage right now, but first, the best flub of the day. It was hot, it was sweaty, and I came up with a handful of shirt and a hand not full of magazine.
Handful of shirt.
Those hot, sweaty summer days will just do that to you, so let's see a little bit more footage of this thing running. All right, so we're gonna take a good up close look here at the Walther. We're gonna check that trigger, see how that thing is wearing in, because it's definitely very nice right out of the box. We're gonna talk about the Walther suppressor height sights that are now on this, the optic plates, and kinda, you know, after that, we'll get into how this thing performed and all those things that you guys wanna know. So if this is your first time here, get subbed up, get belled up, turn the notifications to all on. And if you've been here for a while, double check that stuff is still there. And of course, if you like anything that's going on, or these things right here, give this video a like if you feel that I've deserved it at any time. We're gonna go ahead and get into this Walther PDP right now. All right, so let's talk about the Walther PDP. Now this is the full size with the 4-inch barrel, and I'm not gonna list all of the intricate specs. I did that in my original video. So I kind of list those over here so you guys can take a look at them. We'll just go over the basics. Then we're gonna do trigger pulls and all that stuff. You guys are interested in compare the optics height here to some other stuff so we get a good idea of what is going on. So if you don't know anything about the PDP, it is the Performance Duty Pistol. You're gonna get two 18-round mags with high-vis followers in them. Good stuff, but magic number's 3, right? We should always get 3. You do get interchangeable back straps. They are quite nice. They're rubberized. There's a little bit of give in them, which is nice because even though you shouldn't be over gripping, it does alleviate a little bit of pressure for you. Good stuff. Grip texture is absolutely awesome, and it is just everywhere around there. Got some pretty good side swells right there. Normally, I am not a fan of that stuff, but they feel quite nice on this. We've got a swappable magazine release there, and that thing is large. There's plenty of surface area. Hit the mag release there. Coming up into the underneath of the trigger guard right there. It is nice and flat and wide. I will say that you kind of see that little nick in there from the factory, almost where the mold breaks loose. That gave me a little blister. That's the first time I've had a blister in years firing a pistol, but this one did it. Trigger guard squared off. Got a regular good pick rail going on. Full ambi slide release, slide stop. The mag release is swappable. We'll come back to the trigger in just a second here. Let's go ahead. Standard, pretty standard takedown levers here on the side. Going up, we've got their Super Terrain Serrations right there. Kind of blocky, kind of square, but overall looks great. External extractor, this is the RMR style plate. It is metal. I know some people said those plates were plastic. Mine is metal, so unless they switched, something else. It will come with normally the plastic adjustable sights. Mine has the actual Walther taller sights. They're not quite suppressor height sights, but since the optic is so much lower, they don't have to be as tall. So let's talk about this trigger right here, because Walther's kind of made a name for themselves when it comes to the triggers from like the PPQ and stuff. So it is nice. It does go completely flush right there. So if you're looking at that ruler right here, I promise it's going to play a pivotal role here in just a minute. So you look at that trigger shoe safety, it does go all the way flush, which is quite nice. It's got a good feel to it. I do wish it was flat, but you know, once you depress that, you get to your wall. So there is a decent amount of take up, but you hit a nice hard defined wall, okay, right there. And then it's just an instant break. Here's the reset, which is super short, right there, and a break again. Outstanding once you get past that first set of take up. We'll do some trigger pulls here. I'm gonna pull a little higher, right, than I normally do. And that thing pulls sub 4 pounds. Now I try to get my fingers low on the trigger as possible because that gives you the cleanest overall break when it comes to standard triggers. But let's do another one. We're gonna go right from the middle, just barely enough to depress the safety. And that is still under 5 pounds, even though I went really high up on the trigger shoe. Because if I go lower around this area, that thing pulls about 3 pounds and 8 ounces. So that thing is solid, absolutely solid for a standard trigger out of here. Let's go ahead and talk about the optics height, because that was one of the things that they really kind of talked about. This thing was made from the ground up, built for optics. Now there's some truth to that. We're going to talk more about it in a minute. We'll bring in my CZ P10F right here, and we're going to compare the height of these optics as they sit on the plates here, which is where my ruler comes in. So I'm going to put the ruler straight across here on the optics, so I know that I'm going to be holding these things flat. And I just want you guys to see the actual height difference. Let me get these lined up.
A few moments later.
So on the right hand side is going to be the Walther PDP, and on the left is the CZ. Now you can see, if you kind of focus a little bit more towards the back of the housing, you will see more easily the height difference. There's about 1/8 of an inch of height difference in how tall the optic sits. Again, I'm trying to give you the best footage I can. That's probably about as good as it's going to get, but you can see the CZ sits quite a bit taller. Now what that does is it makes quite a bit of difference as you present. You're not coming up too high and then having to kind of come down to view through your optic, because most of us are used to iron sights. So the fact that the millwork here for the optic is so deep into the slide, it puts it more at a natural point of aim for those of us that grew up with iron sights. Well done there. Like I said, we'll talk more about that later. So let's check out some more range footage. Let's talk about the positives and the negatives and how this thing performed, and did it suffer the same fate as the H&K. All right, so if you couldn't tell by the way that Walther named everything on this pistol, between the performance duty pistol, the performance duty trigger, they really were looking to go after the performance branding in the market, kind of like Glock does with their Glock's perfection. And the other big thing they talked about was how this was specifically designed from the ground up to be an optics ready pistol. Everything from the ergonomics to the serrations to the height that they milled down into the slide to outfit an optic. The question is, how does all of this turn out for a $649 pistol? So let's go ahead and break down some of the positives and the negatives on this thing. Number one being the trigger on this thing is just absolutely great. The take up is still there, but the actual break, the reset is just so much better than so many other striker things out there in the market. Now, if they could clean up a little bit of that take up, it would be a ton better, but still, hands down, one of the better striker fired triggers right out of the box. And having a better trigger like that, that's smoother, cleaner, and it's pretty light, I mean, it's really light, can help you perform just a little bit better out on the range as compared to something that's like 6, 7, or just a nasty overall feeling trigger, like a lot of other striker fired stuff out there. The next big positive is going to be just the overall ergonomics of this. Now, this thing is one of the best feeling pistols in it. It has to do with the grip angle. It has to do with the kind of side swells in the grip. I don't like finger grooves in the front, but that little bit of rubber give on that back strap and the way that this thing just naturally points out there is really, really good, especially for the angles that my wrists want. So if you want a more 1911-esque grip angle, it is all here. Now this leads me down the road of what they talked about with their optics mounting system and their optics revolutionary design, or whatever they want to call it, right? So the way that they've milled so deep into the slide exposes the actual striker valley. But by doing that, instead of having an optic that's really high, you kind of have to bring the gun back down, it aims naturally. So what I mean by that is if you're switching from iron sights to an optic, a lot of times you have to come out and you kind of have to go down because you've got to bring the pistol up, but then you realize you're going for the iron sights and you need to be through the optic, so you kind of have to go back down because your optic is a lot higher than your iron sights here, right? Kind of makes sense. One of the things I noticed right off the bat is just pressing this thing right out, the optic was right where I needed it to be without any adjustment up or down. That may be true for some of you, it may be not, depending on how much you shoot with a red dot on your current pistol. And the last big positive for me is going to be that grip texture. So get a good up close look at that again. It's not as aggressive as the M&P, which is really one of my favorites, but it seems to give you all of the grip performance that the M&P does without being as, I guess, kind of abrasive to your hand or to your flesh on your stomach if you're carrying one of those 2.0's appendix. So they've done a great job there, and that is all the way around. They have given grip all the way around that pistol grip, which is definitely a positive because not all manufacturers give you really good grip texture from the factory, which is why tons of companies do aftermarket stippling. People put grip tape on there, people do their own stippling and make their guns look hideous, but they did a solid job on the grip texture. Now let's talk about some of those things that may be negatives or maybe a wash. And the first one's gonna be these serrations. Now for me, they are a positive. They're massive, but for some people, that's gonna be a lot. That might be a little too much, especially when you go to work that thing with your hands or whatever. They're not sharp or anything, but they are big, very, very bold serrations, which may not be everybody's thing. Now, the second thing on the PDP that I'm gonna give it a negative for is waiting for that optic plate. Some people were telling me they got them in like a week or two. I waited over a month and then I had to email Walther's customer service and then I got it about 3 or 4 days later. When these things don't come with plates, it's really a pain in the butt because you have to wait around for it. Now, if this is something you were planning on carrying right away and you wanted to put your optic on it, that's a huge downer that you may or may not get your plate in 3, 4, 5 days or 4 weeks in my case. Overall, they did fix the issue, but still something to keep into account. And I said this in my first video as well, Walther. Everybody say it with me one time, the magical number for mags, 3. Give us 3 magazines. You have marketed this thing to the point of calling it the performance duty pistol, and you gave me 2 mags. Now, granted, it's pretty awesome. They're 18 round mags. Give us 3 mags. You're not giving us all the optic plates up front so we can use whatever optic we want. So give us a 3rd magazine and then I'll kind of forgive you on the optics plate thing. And the last thing, it came with plastic sights, just like a lot of other striker fired stuff does, but these are the Walther taller sights on here. Absolutely awesome. They're blacked out. They work quite well, but the factory one came with like an adjustable plastic sight. Come on, this thing you said was built from the ground up as a optic performance pistol. Why would you put regular height plastic sights on it? Just put the tall metal sights on it from the factory so we can all use it the way we want, which is with an optic. So after going through all of that and having this thing out to the range a couple hundred times with a few hundred rounds through it, normally I would like to have more, but ammo's tough right now and it's gotten a little bit cheaper, but it's still expensive. What are my overall thoughts of this thing? Did it live up to that in-store feeling or did it suffer the same fate that the VP9 did for me when I got it out to the range and was just like, meh? I have to say, absolutely lived up to my expectations from the first time I ran that bare standard right here. Or that first build drill. The thing absolutely felt great. Now the trigger does have that pre-travel in it, but the brake and the reset, absolutely fantastic. Grip texture, fantastic. Angles, great. The depth of that optic to make it very natural on the aim came out just right. Normally I'm not that kind of positive or overall happy with a pistol in kind of all aspects of the way it was designed. They absolutely nailed it on this one, in my opinion. Now, I know some other people may not like the serrations and all that stuff. I'm okay with it. I like the look of them. I like the feel of them. It's an optic pistol, so this gives you a lot more meat to grab onto, so you don't have to work that off of the optic if you have a malfunction drill. There is a lot of good stuff about this pistol. May not be everybody's thing, but it's definitely a solid setup out of the box, and hands down, one of my favorite pistols of 2021. Now, having that good of an experience, did I have any issues with it out there? Yes, and that was in getting used to it. So the ambi slide stop slide release right here is pretty extended and pretty large. And just because of that and the way I grab, I activated the thing more than once out there on a slide lock, let the slide go forward, or I would lock it back on a full magazine just because I hadn't gotten used to hand placement on it. That's not a pistol thing, that's a me thing. A lot of people won't have that issues, but if you've got larger hands, you really need to pay attention to your grip on there because you could activate that slide release. So the cost on this thing, I paid MSRP, which was $649 for the full size 4-inch version. And then I had to wait for my plates. And if you want mags, I think they're like $50 a piece. They're not cheap. So is it solid at that price? I would say, yeah, I'm happy with it. Although generally you can find things well under MSRP. It's just in all of the chaos that's been going on, I got stuck with the absolute manufacturer suggested retail price, but I am happy that I got the thing because it has turned out to be an absolute performer. It may or may not be within your budget spectrum, but if you have the budget at that price point, looking at Glock or the M&Ps or anything, it is definitely one to look at and compare to all the other optics ready stuff that's out there in the market. The only other issue that has come up is people were talking about if the optics plate was going to hold up, since there are no reference marks or, things for that like posts to sink into on the slide. Plenty of people, to include Mr. Guns and Gear and Sage Dynamics and other people, have been beating on these things hard enough to kind of give me the confidence that that optics plate is going to hold up just fine. Well, that is what I have got for you all today. I hope you guys liked learning about the Walther PDP and kind of seeing how things turned out with this, because like I said, was not positive right off the bat with this thing. So we had some issues, but we worked through it. Make sure you guys get subbed up, get belled up, turn the notifications down there to all on, and like the video if at any point you feel that I have deserved it. If you guys want to support the channel, you can check out the Patreon. Huge thank you to all of my Patreons. You guys are outstanding and help out the channel so much, and I appreciate everything you do. If you want to help out in other ways, you can use any of the links down below. Check out my website. All that stuff does help keep the channel going. You guys get out there and have some fun. Remember, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. And I will see you guys on the next one.